This is GreenPlanet BluePlanet Podcast, featuring distinctly qualified global changemakers dedicated to creating a healthier planet, whose unique gifts are lived, expressed, and celebrated. My name is Julian Guderley, and today my guest is Estas Tonne. Estas, I'm really excited for you to be here. Estas is a musician who describes himself as a modern-day troubadour, and his music, if you don't know it yet, is something to deeply experience and to immerse into soundscapes, is an emotional expression and a wide range of audible elements that not only stem from various music genres, but also are a true expression of emotion. And so, Estas, I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, your music speaks for itself, but today we get to hear you and we get to hear some of your story, but maybe also just some of your worldviews and the way you experience reality. And you're in beautiful Mexico, where you and I met just a few weeks ago.
It feels like a lifetime, actually. It's been only a few weeks ago, but it's been so intensely incredible. I mean, the incredibleness includes everything into it, but it's been really intense, and sometimes you have to cool off as well from the experience. Take few steps back, and continue on the trip. So it feels like a lifetime already.
We got this beautiful soundscape in your background with all the birds in the jungle playing the kind of like the eternal song of planet Earth.
Right.
Yeah. No matter where I am in the world, connecting to the birds is always it's like a secure source of joy when you slow down and you just let them kind of play with your inner sphere.
It's natural.
It's natural, yeah.
It's natural. That's why we call it nature. Right? It's just this thought comes around for me for a long time. Why we call nature nature? Because it's natural. Simple. That's it.
Yeah, let's explore all things natural in the way that we create reality. And I said it in the short intro, like anyone who doesn't know your music yet, you're up for a treat because you get to explore this whole universe. Estas has so many live experiences that you can experience with him, or like not even dozens, like hundreds of videos with hundreds of millions of views, because you're just one of those guys that is able to tap into the expansive moment of now through what I observe to be like the skill body, right? Like having a skill that just expresses through you, but also like this beautifully thin expression of improvisation.
Just like life itself, it's there is always something that we know, and there is always the breath of life that expresses itself. And the only thing I can do in that space or in that state is not to interfere that expression to happen, to take place authentically. Sometimes with the squeaky sounds also, because that's part of that moment, right? Of course, we can polish things in the studio, but that's another trick. That's something else. I am mainly a live performer because some years ago we had a project called Soundtrack, the Elemental Soundtrack, and I was part of that. It's just the soundtrack of the elementals, the elements, all of the elements which are part of this life. Right, so it's kind of like captured moment which we are exploring, right? And if we are blessed to receive that gift, we also can capture that really, on camera, on audio devices, and then we can work with that in the studio. But mainly, it's really capturing that essence every time.
So talking about experiencing and creating life from that place of essence rather than from a place of being rehearsed, right? Like flowing with what actually happens. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you see in our state of humanity at this point. We're like midway through the year 2021. And I'm just really curious to understand from someone who's chosen to follow this artistic expression in his life. What do you think is most required for people in this world today? People listening, people who are maybe, not quite as familiar to step into their own essence, or who have maybe more doubts than flow, or we know everyone is in a different place of expressing what's coming through them. And so I'm curious, what you reckon is like most required to free yourself up to living life fully alive.
I mean, interesting that you brought it up first, that artistic expression, right? And the answer that came through me was in regards to that, right? Allowing that to happen authentically, right? Naturally, just like the birds are singing naturally, right? So if I would align those two kind of like storylines, let's say being on stage and then being off stage, and also reviewing my own life, quite often my inner struggle, and I can only speak for myself because we are all very different, right? And we operate in a very different way. But if I can look at my own life, I can see that my struggle comes with myself normally, is when I'm trying to control things, right? My burned out moments happening out of that control.
Hmm.
So let's say, could I speak for all of the humanity? No, because everyone have to figure that for themselves, And I think such a year as 2020, as a perfect vision, right, brought to everyone that mirror to look at themselves, And some people were kind of wanting to go back to something that was before.
Hmm.
It's like, I lived a great day yesterday, or I lived a shitty day yesterday, and I want to go back to it
Hmm.
due to the filters that I have set in my programming or in my life. Because quite often humans don't see, all of us sometimes missing that main point where we are run by programs which we have created for ourselves, right? So the struggle there is basically that we don't see the program, we don't see our own filters, and we are trying kind of like to go back to the painful place, right? Because it's familiar. Or we're trying to go to the joyful place because it's familiar, right? And all the joy pain, it always like kind of like exchanging places, right? So sometimes we are super duper nice sweet place, in another place we are, in another moment we are super down, right? And that's where I say it's based on the filtering of a personality that recognizing it or not and wanting kind of to repeat that. And many probably wanted to go back to something that they know,
Hmm.
but that's impossible. It's like you would like to eat the same beautiful meal that you had yesterday. It was super, but why would you repeat that same thing every day? Because even the most incredible thing you live, or anyone lives, how many times you can take that same thing? It becomes not interesting because it's the same, right? So the whole part of nature is because the birds are singing authentically. It's not like I replay from the speaker. I remember I lived in LA some years ago in some area where I would hear those birds singing from the speakers. It would be the same repetitive sound of nature. It sounds kind of like nature, but it's just a recording. It's a captured frozen moment. It's a postcard. It's not real, right? And that repetition might kind of like work as a reminder of what nature is and kind of give us sense of nature, right? But in the same time, it's a loop. It's like in recordings today we use loops. But I'm trying to say, everyone I'm working with, let's get out of the loop. If we record 25-minute track, I'm not going to loop the percussion player that played for 1 minute and then we're going to repeat that. No, no, no. We're going for 25 minutes. He will sit and play 25 minutes, real life playing, captured, right? So I guess the main trouble for everyone is that we are afraid quite often for the improvisation to happen, for life itself to happen, to unfold in a new way. Maybe that's, sorry for the little detour, but that's kind of like
No, I
where it
love the
is.
detour, right? That's the detour is the gold.
Mm,
It's so real. I mean, I can relate to that.
mm,
Be like choosing the safe path or choosing the consistent play in, like live real-time play on the edge, where
mm.
it's like I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I don't know who I'm going to connect with if I just follow this intuition, and I choose courage, right? Like from the heart over any kind of fabricated world that the mind can create.
I mean, we are given intellect, right? We have this great gift, such as an intellect, and we can use it wisely, but quite often it becomes an obstacle also for creativity. For creativity in all forms, because life is already an art form, right? So this intellect could be a great tool, but it could be also the barrier for exploration, because
Yeah,
you could
big time.
say, I know, and that's the way I want it. And there comes layers, because there are so many layers. There is a child, quite often there is a wounded child, there is a teenager, there is all of aspects of ourselves, what we are, right? There are our lineages, there are all our lifetimes as well, but just within this lifetime, everything is in here, right? So if you see it, that's what kind of, I think, that the great mirror, such as 2020, was for everyone to look at the mirror of ourselves, to have a look at ourselves, with all its discomforts, with all its greatness,
Hmm.
but also all its self-wrestle as well.
Yeah, we know this from, creative expression at its peak and athletic expression from its peak. Like the moment we face uncomfortable situations, we're actually freeing ourselves for the next live moment where we can supersede our old self, right? When
Mm.
it comes to building society, it feels like that's been a tough one for humanity to really become present with. And you're mentioning 2020 a few times. That discomfort, for me, it made it really clear there is an old structure, an old system underlying of our society that is simply not serving the
Right.
way new generations relate, the way we relate through the internet, through love, through kindness, through the attempt for peace on earth. And then there are these ideas of what that could be, and sometimes that gets very new earthy or new agey or wishy-washy, because our job is to pragmatically bring this into the lived experience so we can build these connections. We can you know um, maybe sidestep and advance what are the structures, the systems, the governments on this planet. And so it's not really an easy time to be alive, but it feels like one of the most fruitful times to possibly ever be on this planet is to be part of this shift that, no matter if we're looking at it esoterically or in terms of like prophecies of indigenous cultures, or if we're looking at it simply pragmatically, that
Sure, we can
that
just look through the
happening.
simple eye. I mean, imagine, like when I was flying above Mexico and landing, and I've seen
Mm.
some areas where I've just seen some buildings from above. When the plane was landing, from above, I could see an area where there was lots of structures, there was lots of buildings, and now greenery. There is nothing around,
Mm.
right? And imagine how many places on Earth we have cities where the limitation to nature is so vivid, right? So actually the change of infrastructure, it's like it includes in itself everything, because of course it's like when a guy, let's say somebody who travels the world and he speaks of certain things and he has the experience, or a woman, and they speak about these beautiful colorful things they've seen around the world, and some guy from some remote place would listen to them and say, yeah, I have a completely different reality in my life. I have to work to feed my 3 children, and we live in a tiny little flat somewhere, right? With not even a trace of some greenery around. I'm not talking about even birds singing every day. So infrastructures of the cities which we have today has to change. The educational system has to change, because people, for many, in many countries, I'm sure you've seen that. You arrive to a certain place and there is this tiny little little room But the only thing that people have there, a huge, massive television, because for them it's a window to the world. They can experience some particles of the world, of certain freedom and color and culture, through that massive monitor. And can we say that it's wrong or it's bad? Well, that's at least something they have, you know, to at least to have some sort of a relation to something else in the world apart from the picture they see daily. You know, so this changes in every infrastructure has to happen, but it comes to, wow, many responsible organizations, but of course most importantly to everyone who has an ability to contribute to the change in many parts of the world.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, Estes, because really change happens through us as individuals primarily, and then it can turn into a collective experience. And, you know, fingers crossed we're on this road right now, but awaiting it to come from the external is almost like a little naive, because we know the states of you know, corruption and the states of greed that have captured this planet for a long time. I'm really curious about something specific, though, you said there, and that's the education system. It's one of my favorite things to you know, to drop in about with people, because we know that at the very best, the education system of the masses is simply old. You know, it was created by like Otto von Bismarck in like Germany before the 1900s. And at the very worst, it's straight up an entrainment system into industrial robots, right? And so
Right, but
I'm
you know,
curious.
it's
Yeah,
very, yeah, you
go
finish
for
your
it.
thoughts and I'll go for
Yeah,
another.
my question to you, go anywhere you want with this, right? But my question is, if you could change the education system from your life experience with the experts you would choose, like what would be some pointers you think are like non-negotiable, like absolute essentials to shape the way we educate young ones on the path forward?
Let's thank you. This is such an awesome thought to explore, right? The thing is that I think all of us have to stop whining about what is wrong. What is wrong? You know, we have to stop talking about what was wrong created in that century or that century that led us here, and then why it's still here. Well, it's right still here because majority is still taking it and playing the game, participating in that game. Because, you know, if nobody comes to a certain store or certain restaurant, it shuts down. You know, if you don't go to eat in that restaurant anymore, it cannot sustain itself, right? So it shuts down, and everyone goes somewhere because they know there is something else exists. They need to know, people need to know there is other system, there is another potential, right? So we can say those educational systems or any systems that were created by humans were created in that moment, in that era, for that consciousness that humans were. It was essential for the development of that period, right? And this is where the problem comes in. The problem comes is that the mind kind of like doesn't want to go for new things, because when the child comes in and saying, hey, there is something else, let's explore, and the older guy says, no, I know how it's supposed to be, right? So he doesn't want to get out of that already repetitive knowing. So we have the program been working for decades, right? Is it a good one? Well, not really, but also those programs brought us here. We had our limits, and yet we had our aha moments, right? Can we say that it was completely, entirely bad? Well, I don't know. I grew up in Soviet Union. I can say that certain things were really limiting, really propagandistic, big time. And yet there was this incredible sense of communion and some sort of openness as well that I haven't seen in other places, right? Unless I traveled to certain communities where I felt with people in connection, this openness, right? So there are pluses and minuses in those systems, right? And where I think we are going right now with the development of new realities of education, where we know there is Rudolf Steiner did his work already more than 100 years ago. It's been already available. Montessori school systems were around for just such a long time. And there were many, many more. So I guess it's a matter of really um, research for parents, first of all, to research in what environment the children need to be educated in a way. And of course, no matter what system would be out there, if at household the parents are stuck in the old and they are not innovative and they're not open, then no matter what the child is taken from the school that goes back home, it would be still that same wall there, right? So it's also for everyone to open up a little bit for the new potential, right? And certain values, I feel like, when I was already growing up, thinking like how incredible it would be if, let's say, a proper martial art would be introduced in every school, where a true teacher would be there present to actually share with the kids, with the potential so-called warriors, yeah, right, to take it in a honorable way. What does it mean to be a warrior? Because we are growing up, and then people actually justifying the pain getting jobs as police officers very often, and then we see a lot of violence that comes through them, and quite often is the opposite. They're actually serving because they came to work in those infrastructures actually to serve the society, which is absolutely normal. That was the intention for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many of them went to work as police officers to serve the society and not to become like a bully. Right. And until today, I grew up on the streets when I've seen the police, and I kind of had to run away. Right. And even today, when I see the lights, I'm like, it's because it's somewhere in my system. Right.
It's somewhere in our system. Yeah.
Right.
It's a
And
similar example would be politicians, right?
any
The
kind,
intention is to
everyone.
serve the masses, and then
Right. And
somewhere it goes astray.
in the same time, I'm on all these professions. I'm on all the infrastructures. There are incredible people. There are incredible policemen. There are incredible people who are trying to bring the change in the political systems. There are incredible doctors who are trying to bring true service, and as well as there are incredible teachers. I spoke with a teacher that I knew, and I know her since I'm 8 years old. But before coming to Mexico, I had a telephone conversation with her, and she knows me since I'm 8 years old, and I'm now 8 plus. But at that time, it's because it's a lifetime. It's not about numbers. And we were discussing that time and how she had to handle this whole kind of like a Soviet Union state and inability to fully express her potential as a teacher, right? But what stayed in my memory in regards to this woman is her kindness. It didn't matter what the official program was there, but her kindness stayed with me through all my life. And there are many of us who studied with her at that time. We have that same memory of her, so the system could be complicated. And yet these people, they're like the carriers of certain vibration, of certain heart connection that would, no matter what the system is around, we would be carrying that through life, So, wow, there are so many would say adjustments that could be done within the educational system, and I'm sure there are so many professionals that are out there trying to do that. But I think at just some point we have to stop going to certain supermarkets or certain restaurants and just buy there or just participate in that creation. It wouldn't survive then. There would be other places where we would put our attention and the kids, and that's how it will change. Maybe that's the way. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You mentioned so many beautiful points, and it kind of put flags to come back to some of them in my mind. It's curious to hear about the journey of growing up in a place like the Soviet Union and understanding both the oppressive parts of that system, but also the connection that was felt and lived and experienced through the gateway of kindness. I'm curious to hear more about that. And then at the same time, that's what I'd love to know from your brilliant intellect's perspective, because you're right. There's reality when we're silent, and then there's having a conversation. And by the nature of words, we're focusing in on something very specific. And so um, I'm curious to understand, in your own words, what does freedom and peace look like? And what's the potential for that on the planet?
I would say fearless, but fearless might have a connotation of some sort of violence as well, right? So I would say um, unafraid, unafraid to be ourselves, unafraid to express our truth, unafraid to be misunderstood, unafraid to be, try things out, because I feel like one of the great obstacles for every human being is inability to express themselves. I feel this is one of the greatest obstacles for anyone.
The inability to express ourselves.
Yes, because that's also a cause quite often for diseases. It's the cause for depression, aggression, violence, all kinds of triggers that would be quite a disastrous point for an individual life, right? If it's not perceived and understood and seen by an individual, So inability to express oneself in any kind, it doesn't mean that a human needs to go and be on stage somewhere. It doesn't mean the human need to be on a pedestal somewhere. It doesn't, it just comes to even certain aspects of communication. Quite often, like we have it also in our team, like we have sometimes like really like intense moments, and if we can go through these intense moments together, right, remembering the love that we are and the love for each other that we have, and we can go through these moments because we can have this and we come back to it. It's like in the old movies in Italian family, the plates would be flying all over the place, and and then there would be resolution. Or like in the older days, the warriors, the men, they would have a fight, a good quality, honest fight, right? And then there would be brothers for life. So it's an aspect of expression which quite often destroys lives, and then we can see it also on this political game. It's just kind of dancing around without addressing the true scene and actually sitting in the circle with the true important aspects of a conflict.
Yeah, you're addressing something really interesting there. The paradox that freedom and peace can include, you called it an honest fight, right? The real expression. And I guess what I'm understanding is just to be with what is and find a present interaction with that, rather than kind of the stipulations we've created through politics and business that create certain appropriate and inappropriate actions, but really they're roundabouts to betray ourselves and our values. Because how many political organizations or parties or committees or associations are actually not in alignment in their actions with the values we all have as individuals, right? Of trust, of love, of integrity.
Right, but have a look. Imagine somebody who goes through certain area of life, right? Someone, let's say, is a part of political party or some sort of union or anything or any profession or any kind, right? And don't see the whole thing. Actually, they cannot see the whole picture, right? Doesn't know what he is, what she is, that it's spirit, not spirit. I'm not talking about esoterical aspects, not spiritual aspects, just simple life, right? So this human lives this life and goes through all kind of like repetitions and banging against the wall stories and all dramas and greatness, all kinds of it, right? And having kids and this and that and holidays and all kind of it, right? Then it dies. But in the whole process of it, there is a certain development takes place in this particular area, in this particular environment. in this particular lifeline in the 3D world, right? So the development takes place because it's a game. It's like we are in the game. Like I've seen in India, I was in some ashram and there was this huge transparent and it says like life is a game, play it well. It's like it is a game. So in a way it's like it's a game until the game changed. That's the setting of the game until this setting have changed. And how it changes because the individuals have seen something else. When a man never seen a color and lived in the gray world of his life, how he would know that there is a color? Until he see color, something happens. The heart gets cracked a little bit. And then like, wow, there is something else possible. Then something else starts. That's a new potential. But before this potential happened, that's why countless films were made. That's why we have an expression of life that we call art and has a potential for humans to shift the perception. Either it's a music or through any kinds, it's like through film or through sculpting or through book writing or through anything or through cooking, through anything. It's like someone would have a meal and would say, wow, I have never experienced such a deliciousness in my life until this moment. I only knew plain salad, where we have just salad and cucumber and tomato. That's what I thought the salad is. I actually literally had this experience when I arrived to a certain place and I've seen like, wow, actually the salad, what was the salad? What all the colors that we could find, Yeah. So that's what it is for human to see and contribute to another kind of playground. He or she needs to see a new potential, something else. Until that happens, like there would be this kind of like I don't know. I literally call it like a gray world.
A gray world. Yeah.
We did a musical many years ago in Goa, in India, and it was about that. The guy lives in the gray world, and then he saw a dream of a color. He goes everyone to ask about this color, and everyone says like, there is no color in this world. We don't know what the color is. We actually don't have reference point until he meets someone who has that color also. And then they have the story, and then the story unfolds, and it's a story of a fool. It's just a classical story of a hero with 1,000 faces, that goes on the journey.
Right. And that potential expansion, or that expansion of potential, it's really hard to predict. I guess what I've been observing in my own experience of life, and possibly, this is something people can resonate with, is the moment your mind wants to find a linear answer, it's usually already a dead end street, because life isn't really linear. Potential happens in non-linear ways, I guess. Possibly at a further state of our evolution, we might call this a quantum state, or a state of non-linearity. And in each shadow is a massive potential for a gift. So if we didn't know a world where we could feel empathy or compassion for each other, that's maybe the gray world. And we, for many of us, that's maybe now something we are increasingly feeling for each other. But there's many more people that are still, living in their minds, reality creation. And so from one day to the other, something could shift. something changes, like a devastating natural catastrophe, or you remember in the US, for example, when 9/11 happened, no matter what's behind that happening, the next day there was a wave of compassion. We could even measure it with scientific
Right.
gear, tapping into the heart sphere of humanity through
I was
coherent
there.
words.
I was there. I was in
You
New
were in
York
New York?
one week after 9/11. I was in New York for 1 year. I stayed in New York from that moment. This is actually when the guitar came back into my life. I didn't play for 10 years. That happened in that period. I came to
Wow.
New York to live in New York for 1 year. I stayed 1 week after this event. So I have seen what was going on, and this is where all aspects are merging, the pain meets compassion.
Hmm.
And how compassion arises out of pain. We know what pain is, then we can relate to it. It's not just a fluffy compassion, but some of us already come with it to be like the balancers maybe of this world. I had to learn a hard way. I had to go through both aspects big time. I had to see both sides, the light and the dark. I feel like it's actually beneficial probably for everyone to see. And it's just right now, the guy was there cleaning the grass, and I was observing that, and part of me kind of wanted to like on him, and we were discussing this topic, and then I was just like kind of watching like how long he would stay around here. Do I need to do anything about it, because it was a bit disturbing for the sound, right? And he just naturally went somewhere else. He was just completely immersed in what he was doing. It's not his fault in a way that he is kind of interfering in our thing. Can we take it? Can we take this coexistence right now? Because if we cannot take this coexistence, it would create a conflict right now, right? It literally could create a conflict, but it didn't, because we just kept on going with our topic, right? There was no obvious reaction to it, even though like we could observe that, right? Can we do it every time? Depends on so many factors. Sometimes we can, and sometimes our dragon's coming out also,
Yeah.
and that's on level of human, and that's on level of governments, and that's on the level of one nation to another nation, and if we have tools, and that we're coming back to the education, if we have tools to live our day, I'm not talking about even the whole life, just to go through one day of life, if we have enough of correct tools, not brainwash tools, not some book tools, experiential tools, so we could be prepared for it. Like a true martial artist doesn't practice to go and chop heads off. He practices to be ready for the moment when they need it, for protection, for energetic resolution, I would say.
Yeah, there's a beautiful element to what you just expressed, which is not the tools of knowledge and programs. We called it programs a few times in this conversation, but the tools of experiencing life. And really, I feel like part of this shift on the planet, this awareness shift, and who knows, maybe 2020 and 2021 we'll look back at the times of what we call coronavirus as an awakening into more compassion, because at some point we just stopped trying to control everything into place and realized that
Right.
isn't working. What will work is to be compassionate, to love each other, to accept each other, to grieve with each other when we lose loved ones, and to create a world not from a linear mind that wants to create rules, but from a compassionate and open heart that uses the tools of the mind to discern, and suddenly a whole new world is possible. I have a question there for you, Estas, and that is about around trust, because really I believe to create a world from the heart, and many spiritual traditions talk about this, many indigenous cultures talk about this, that the longest journey of the human is from the head to the heart. And so in order to create this world, I believe trust is a very important quality. And so my question for you is, what does it require for you to experience trust?
Just trust. Like just coming to my mind right now, just trust, but then it's easy to say. I witnessed that from many others, and maybe they were a reflections for me to actually truly feel what it means. And I can give you an example. A few days ago, Tribalize, we had a crazy sound trip, right? 4 boys getting on stage. We have never played together. Some of us already played over some years ago, right? 10 years ago, or some 7 years ago we met, right? We haven't been 4 of us in that same space ever, actually, this reality, right? This life.
Wow.
And we just get on stage and go for the trip. What happens there in that space? And that happened to me countless times, because I've shared that space thousands of times. This is not, I'm not talking about hundreds, thousands, right? What comes there, we can recognize right away who is not listening. We can recognize immediately who wants to be seen. We can recognize immediately who is needy. And if all of these aspects are in balance, that we just become one, basically. There is no competition. There is not like the singer need to take over. There is no like that the drummer need to express himself in a solo. If it's naturally happens, wonderful. If it's not, it's wonderful. It's not that Estas needs to play his guitar for 3 hours by himself there, right? It becomes one sound trip where all the elements just serve in this moment through listening, through the sensitivity and the remembrance that we are in service to this. It's not about me anymore. Right? So if like to answer what trust to me is it's kind of like it's all they're all of these elements, because I witnessed that so many times where the musicians getting on stage with its task, and I never do rehearsals with no one. We get on stage, it doesn't matter what country it is, where it is, with whom it is. If there is a heart connection already there, we already met before, we just know of each other and we had the mutual connection, right? We can go to that state as a sound space and just be in that moment together, right? Trusting that space will express itself through us, that breath of life will express itself through us in a perfect way, just as it's supposed to be. We just don't have to interfere. That's it. Because if we do, it's seen immediately by everyone. Right? And that's the cause of many conflicts that we have as humans between us. Because we're coming back right now again to those filters and programs.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't look at ourselves in the mirror and don't recognize our neediness, our loneliness, our separation, our unknowing who we are, what we are here to do and to be, if we don't have any of these glimpses, it's quite a hard trip, actually, because this human is fully cut from what this human is. Right? And I don't want to use the terminology that theologians would use, but it's all the same thing, It's all the same thing. It's just been used and named and tagged, and framed over centuries, over lifetimes, whatever we want to call it.
Your example is very beautiful because it talks of the experience on stage. And so I guess the theologists and the philosophers of the past, when we read their words, they're just words, they're constructs in our mind. And as long as it's an understanding in our mind, we're still a degree away from the actual experience of it.
But imagine, because of the translators, because of the middleman, can we say that all those holy people that we read in books and know about didn't exist and didn't have that life experience? They were probably, but what came after them? the system, the translators, the controllers, those who didn't, they also maybe wanted to experience that, but for them it was through the mind, and through the mind we cannot get there, because if I go through the mind constructing music, it's not going to be a real thing. It will be a beautiful thing, but it wouldn't have that majesty of spontaneity, right?
Yeah, and in our time, this is a beautiful full circle to this conversation. This podcast is called GreenPlanet BluePlanet, and really, it's a kind of a tap on the social cultural experiences on this new Earth, on this planet that we're building together. In our time, we're noticing that the mind's world, the world the mind can create, it's not that it's not working, but there's a degree of it where it's not working. So what I mean with that is there is a reality the mind created, and we have these houses and these cars and we fly to places in airplanes. But really the factor of what that costs us, the destruction of ecosystem, the experience of separation from each other as, as humans, as men and as women, is shockingly apparent in this day and age. Our disconnection from healthy immune systems, or our disconnection from healthy soil and waterways, it's just very visible, and it's never
Yeah,
been that clearly visible. And so
right.
because of that visibility, I guess I'm really like my mind is blown, because what I'm seeing in this conversation so apparently is the only way forward are non-linear, spontaneous moments of compassion. I can plan for it, you can plan for it. But the moment we experience these waves of compassion because of unforeseen events, we reorient with the rhythm of nature. We come back to realize our true nature, our natural state. That's not in the extension of the fast speed world of the mind, but that's in this space where we're in trust with the moment, and in that moment we know what to do.
Right, right, right. But I think it's also comes to the place where such a conversation could maybe happen, let's say here, many, 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 many individuals that would understand this language we are sharing right now. And yet it would be limited to probably still a majority of people, right? In certain areas of this world. Why? Because these areas of the world, they are in ghettos. No matter, even though they have internet or they have big screen on this tiny apartment, yeah, the isolation, they say, it's still there, and I feel it's also part of this border phenomena. And I understand why the borders are there. I understand why the countries were there. Every country was created by power. Every country was created by occupation. Every country was created by exchanges and the political interests and power, basically, right? And the thing is that at some point, I feel it has to open up. I understand why it still exists, because like you cannot just like put everyone out there to go and storm to Costa Rica right now without being conscious about the environment and preservation of the nature. Or I'm just taking as an example because Costa Rica is a beautiful park, right? It created as a beautiful park, or similar places or other places. But in the same time, I feel like just touching this different reality for representatives of communities from different parts of the world could maybe expand their local view of what is possible in their respective countries, or so-called countries, or their respective places around the world. Because we say some people are primitive, but actually those so-called primitive people have way more knowledge about herbs and about the trees and about the animals around, that Western mind could benefit studying, right? And I feel the open borders, or the opposite, the closed borders and the passports which we have today, and they are just a representation of the system which is closed, a heart which is closed and untrusting, really not trusting, not trusting that, hey, it's actually could be totally fine if these people come from there to here, and this exchange of opinions and ideas could happen. That's why we see like fascinating places around the earth where cultures from many parts of the world living together. This is incredible to watch, right? Like I've been
It's
a lot
totally possible.
in France or England or New York, of course, or Tel Aviv. It's like a mixing pot. It's like um, and again, yeah, I don't know. We probably cannot perceive all of the process. The sadness comes that, wow, yes, the rivers are polluted. Yes, there is so much plastic. Yes, there is shortage of this or shortage of that. There, the misuse of this or misuse of that. But we cannot see full of the picture yet. It's like we are children running around playing with all different kind of toys that we have created, not even knowing yet the consequences of these toys being around, right? But
Very true.
The process is on, because there are people who are envisioning today a new potential for correct usage of these toys, and maybe not as many toys. It's like there is a process, and in the cosmic time, what we are living, like this iPhone situation. How long do we have iPhones? 20, 15 years? What is
Not
that?
even,
I don't. Yeah, exactly. So yes, everything sped up and everything became so fast, right? We are like this, in an instant we can connect. But maybe we cannot really even perceive the whole picture. We can contribute daily, every day, to a little bit more of expansion, of consciousness, of development, of contribution to the whole. Each of us, a little bit by little bit, every day, and little bit by little bit, every moment. And then maybe it inspires somewhere else to question their reality, and also to come and join and explore, and maybe stop going to that restaurant.
Beautifully put, Estes. May it be so.
Maybe
And
so.
your music is a big contribution to that, for anyone who is feeling it, experiencing it, listening to it, stepping into that live space of performance, or even if they have to listen to it on a recording, just to
But
step in
even
for a moment.
just maybe to bring this thought of collectiveness into music also, I would say, when I listen to the recordings of this music over a few decades, and I keep a track of all the recordings, and I see the evolution of the recordings, and having a memory of where every little thing came from, when I listen to it and observe that, I can see that within this or that song or this or that sound trip, countless of participants. Can we say that it's just a stars? Of course not. Countless, not just the musicians. This conversation might shape that next sound journey that Estas will play. You see? So can we say that actually even belong to someone? I mean, yes, we have to deal with the copyrights, we have to deal with the releases and publishing and distribution. That's all fine. That's part of the reality at the moment. But in truth, every creation has infinite participants in it. We don't need to get super duper spiritual about that. It's just life that breathes in every aspect of it, of itself.
I feel this one. Moving out of the intellectual rehearsal of what could be spiritual concepts into just living it with each other, feeling it in every moment and stepping forward, right? That's the invitation for all of you listening today, is to breathe with us in this space and to step forward and contribute what's yours to do. Thank you so much, Estas, for your presence, for your prayer, for your music, for your play, for your fun, and for this amazing hour we got to spend together today.
Thank you so much, Julian. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Heart. And blessings to all. And we just keep on walking, we're just like all kids, and yet we are all ancient as it gets, contributing to this incredible play that is ongoing. The matter is just here to see where is the theater and where is the nature expresses itself.
Beautiful. Thank you.